Hi everybody, and this is Maddie Osman going live on Facebook to talk about the user experience and how we can improve it. So today on the list we are going to be looking through windycitycosmo.com, my good friend Amanda's website. It's actually a lifestyle blog following her adventures in Chicago, sometimes the good, sometimes the bad, but always exciting. So this will be a unique entry on our list so far. I think this is the fourth website I've gone through as part of these Facebook Lives, and I think it's the first lifestyle blog. I mean, we went through Mandy's blog last week, which is very similar, but it also has like a totally different audience and purpose and different things that Mandy is selling. Amanda's more focused, I would say, on just content, building her brand. She doesn't necessarily have something to sell right now besides the fact that she wants to work with sponsors. She wants to build her blogging brand in that regard and partnering with brands to find paid partnerships. So it's a little bit different than what we were talking about with Mandy. I just wanted to make that distinction that, this will be new in that regard. So here's Amanda's website, and upon first impressions, it looks amazing. One of the better design blogs that I have personally been exposed to. And Amanda has definitely gone through many changes in terms of how her blog layout, has been designed in the past year even. So it's really cool to watch from my perspective her, continuing to make her blog better and growing it. And even since I first met her, her blog has really gone to new heights. She's worked with really cool new brands. And so, the goal for Amanda here is, one, providing awesome content that people want to read and come back to, but also two, to be attracting those premium brands that want to be featured on her blog. So the first thing I want to point out that I think all bloggers need to realize, and that a lot of them haven't necessarily figured out yet, or maybe they're just not aware, is you have to switch to HTTPS. I'm trying to get this little window out of here. Okay. So if you see here, it says not secure. Your connection to the site is not secure, and that is because it doesn't have an SSL certificate installed. And usually SSL certificates were something that you would use on like an e-commerce website or a bank website. It essentially encrypts whatever personal information you share with the website while you're there, and the SSL certificate is kind of that thing that tells you it's okay to be sharing your sensitive information on that site versus another one like a blog. So blogs typically didn't need to worry about this. I would say it's definitely a new worry in the space for people who aren't, collecting sensitive information necessarily. But unfortunately, HTTPS is now a ranking factor, I guess for better or for worse, on Google. Unfortunately, for those who haven't yet made the switch over. And so, pretty easy to do in terms of the basics. Whatever host that you're hosting with should have some sort of SSL certificate offer. Most of them are free, but if you do have to pay, the price usually starts at $60 a year, somewhere around there. But most hosts, SiteGround, Kinsta, there's a GoDaddy, they should all offer SSL certificates included for each site that you host with them. So number one priority if you want to be ranking in relevant search is switch over to HTTPS. There's some other things you have to do, like redirect your HTTP URLs to HTTPS. You can do that usually with like a find and replace tool that, like for example, Kinsta does offer that. In their hosting packages, I'm not so sure about the others that I mentioned. But there's also plugins that you can use to redirect these URLs, like Redirection is a free one. I use Yoast SEO Premium to do all my redirects. So Amanda, something to think about is that you're going to want to switch to HTTPS soon, especially if your goal is to be driving in people from search, just because it is now becoming an important ranking factor. I think as of late July is when it officially, came into effect. So moving on from HTTPS, one thing that I wanted to point out really quick here is that there is a slight difference in navigation when you go to mobile. So as you can see here, you have Instagram and Facebook, and then you have the normal navigation here that you already saw. I'm going to pull that up again. And then now, once you expand the website back to like the desktop size, the desktop resolution, then you see that we also add in LinkedIn, and it looks like this is an email straight to Amanda. So a couple comments here. The first one is that you probably want to make sure that your mobile navigation matches your desktop navigation, just so that whatever those same goals are still get accomplished. I would say that it's because you're a blog and you want to attract brands and you also want to be able to talk to your readers, having your email available seems like the right thing to do. But I would suggest instead having a contact page and maybe also a press page, because I know it is a goal of Amanda's to be able to work with those premium brands, and that's what they're looking for is a press page. And so far, I don't see an option for that in the navigation. So creating that page with an embedded contact form where you can get whatever information you need to get started would be preferable to sharing your email. One of the reasons you don't want to share your email in your website and navigation as a link really anywhere is because spammers can scrape it, and then it's just really annoying to deal with. It's a little easier to encrypt the data, especially in terms of the address that it's getting mailed to, so Amanda in this case, when you use the contact form. So I would recommend getting rid of this and embedding contact forms on pages where it is relevant, and to definitely have a contact and a press page. So the problem with that is maybe that it's going to screw up this navigation up here, at least in terms of its current size, the current things that are represented here. But it's important to think of navigation as really one of the most important pillars of your user experience, because if people can't find what they want in a short enough amount of time, they're just going to leave, no matter how beautiful your website is. And at the end of the day, we're talking about not great design, but great user experience design. So another thing that I would expect to see in this menu navigation is a home page link, and you'll notice that the name of the website is actually linkable to the home page, and it is the header. But I don't think it's enough. I think that to have a truly great and user experience that models the sort of common heuristic of what people expect in terms of navigation, you need to have a home button here that does the same thing. It's okay if you leave this here and that links too, but just to match it up here with a home button. So then another thing that I wanted to say about the navigation is I do love kind of like the names of the different categories that Amanda's going after here. I do wonder if they are perhaps a bit vague. So, if somebody is looking at these, like the strategy, I'm not really sure what to expect when I click through. I'm going to look, just because I'm curious and I haven't really figured it out yet. Okay, so it looks like this is some more like business related stuff, and Amanda herself is a great marketer, so she has a lot of interesting things that she can share with her audience, but the strategy, it's not really indicative of what I'm finding here. Obviously there's a naming heuristic here, whatever the category is, but it might need to be rethought in terms of matching expectations to reality. So then we have the scene, which I would assume has to do with Chicago, so maybe even the city would be better. I think the look kind of makes sense. That's fashion. The connections is probably about, networking and things like that. Or maybe like friends, like other bloggers in Chicago. But so that the question is, what is it? It could be either one of those things, and I don't know by looking at the title. The hookup sounds like maybe it has to do with dating, but maybe not. It could be Amanda, hooking people up with advice for something else. And then the hustle, we have like business, we have networking, and then we have the hustle. So I think, Amanda, it might make sense to think through these names. If this naming if this naming mechanism is going to work, maybe you want to go more basic with the names of your categories. I'm not sure. I think it's something that you need to consider just in terms of matching those expectations. So I won't belabor the point too much. If it becomes a point where there's going to be too much in this menu with the home button and maybe like a contact or press page, you might consider using drop-down navigation. And this is another thing that UX designers, they either love it, they hate it. They have strong opinions about whether a drop-down menu is ideal or not. I think that when you run a media website where the focus is on content and you have to organize a lot of different content, I think that exceptions can be made for drop-down menus just because you have to be able to create navigation where people can find what they need in the shortest amount of time possible while also creating organization for that content, so you're guiding people. So I think in this case, a drop-down could be useful. Have all the blog categories in one area, home, about, contact, and then also have room for future pages as necessary without crowding this space and getting it cluttered. So let's look at Amanda's about page, because I think about pages are one of those important places where you can use it to really connect with someone, really make sure that you guys are both right for each other, the person's in the right place, this website is relevant to them. These are all things you can do with the about page if you do it well. I think that something like an about page, although Amanda's sidebar has a lot of really useful information here about, popular posts and where you can follow her and things like that, I think that you might want to get rid of the sidebar on the about page just because you want to put the focus on the story that the about page is telling you. You can maybe incorporate these elements into the page itself, but I don't think it's a good idea to distract them with the sidebar as is. Another thing I might suggest, just because this is a content website, granted, Amanda's audience is, I would say, primarily made up of young business professionals, primarily women, 20s, 30s, somewhere around there. But I would blow up the text a little bit, maybe just up the font point by 2 points or something like that, so it's a little bit easier to read. I can read it now. I'm her target audience, but my eyesight is pretty good, at least up close. So you just want to create the best possible reading experience for everyone, and that's just like a simple thing that just about anyone can do, is just up the font size, because guaranteed there's people who can't read this. Another thing, and we talked about this on Mandy's website last week too, is this commenting feature and how it probably doesn't have a place on pages when compared to how you normally use it on a blog post. So granted, it actually worked and she got some comments on here, but some of them are pingbacks, so probably links from other content that she's created just based on what I'm seeing here. But that doesn't really have a place here. It kind of distracts from the main purpose. It takes up almost half the page here. So I would just get rid of it so that we could put the focus on, who is Amanda? What is Windy City Cosmo? I think she does a good job of explaining what it's all about, sharing some of her great pictures. It might make sense to have a contact form because she does have this work with Amanda piece here. So obviously that's an important goal of this website, or a link to her press page, or both. And she also, has sort of like a call to get featured, which is kind of an offset of the work with Amanda idea, but either way, better served with a contact form. So while we're at it, let's just look at the sidebar and see kind of what it gets across. I love the profile pic sort of thing up here and the quick, this is what Windy City Cosmo is about. Let's go back to the homepage because I know it's there. And like I said with Sam's website, who was the first one that we went over, I'm iffy about if the homepage should be just your latest posts. She also has popular posts here, and I'm not sure. Yeah, it looks like they are different than the latest posts, so that's cool. with a media company, it probably does make sense for your homepage to be at least partially made up of your latest posts. Oh, hey, Sam. she's commenting on the live video. But I think that you want to also use your homepage as a place to push your most important goals. And so, depending on the nature of your feed, it might not adequately show, what your most important goals are just because it's showing whatever it is that you published lately. So it might make sense to reposition this page in terms of like, okay, here's my latest post, but also like, here are like my biggest goals. We talked about having like blocks where it's like, okay, for Amanda's sake, it might be work with me, get featured, or, maybe from like a reader's standpoint, like ask a question or submit like, topics that you want to learn more about or something like that. So I would say, Amanda, it might make sense to reconsider how you're positioning your homepage in terms of your most important goals, getting that subscriber box in a full page layout, getting rid of this sidebar. But I don't want to skip around too much. Let's look back at the sidebar again. So I think that the title here could be a little bit stronger. Get the latest. It doesn't really tell me what I'm getting the latest of. Granted, you go and describe it later on. But one thing that seems to work really well for a lot of people is doing some sort of relevant lead magnet. So, maybe for Amanda's case, because she is targeting these like young professional women in Chicago, maybe it's Amanda's best networking tips for, getting ahead in the Chicago startup scene or whatever, something like that. And making some promise in the text here, and you'll also receive Amanda's networking guide or whatever. That could make it easier for people to willingly give up their email address. So something that you might want to think about, Amanda, is just creating, some sort of PDF useful guide that members of your audience, couldn't help but subscribe for. So I'm not sure if this is just like a big piece of content or why it's featured here. You might want to add a title or some sort of heading. You might want to also switch it out because now we're going into fall, and granted, this is kind of a thing that just happened. I think we just officially got into fall. But you got to give some context here. And then I might make this more action oriented. Follow me on Instagram. Follow at Windy City Cosmo on Instagram, so you start to get people familiar with your handle on different networks. I think the popular post is great, and I love how good they look with these little labels with the names over the images. The Facebook thing doesn't seem to be loading, so you're going to want to check that. And then I would add a little bit more context to your podcast here because I think this is kind of a newer thing for you. And it's a really cool extension of your brand, but you need to give some context so people understand what it's doing on your sidebar here. And then so you have the search bar here. I would recommend putting that closer to the top of your sidebar just because that's where people expect it, maybe even at the very top. And then I like the label, I need to know, but I think it's a little bit distracting from what the purpose of it, which is search. You might just want to keep it simple and say, search for relevant articles about whatever. And then, Amanda has her Instagram, and I don't know if this is her Facebook feed here or if this is just like a link to Facebook, but either way, she has some good social calls to action here, a beautiful feed. Overall, the design of the website is really great, but just a couple little things you could do to improve the user experience. Let's look at the blog post really quick as kind of the last thing here. And I think the sidebar works great. Again, bump up the font size a little bit, maybe even for the heading too. I think that could be a little bit bigger without sacrificing anything. Make sure that when you're uploading images that they're big enough, because I feel like, there's more detail here that we can't see with just a square. Obviously, every blog post is different. I'm just picking on this one because it's the first one that I opened, but just some general ideas for blog post usability. I love her author box. I would say that there's probably an overabundance of social share buttons in this vicinity here, because we have Amanda's author social, and then we have a call to action to share this, but then we also have follow, which is like the same as this. So maybe the share this could go like at the top, and then we have a fourth one here, so it's just a little bit of overkill. I do like the you may also enjoy related articles, and then she has her comments here. All that looks great, but just maybe reduce the share button so that it's not so in your face. So other than that, I think that's all I have for Amanda's website. I really had to nitpick because I really do love her layout, and I love how it really accurately reflects her brand. I think that she does a really good job of personal branding on her own website here. Make it a little bit more clear how people could work with you, because I think that's definitely a big goal of yours, but it's not accurately reflected in the current state of the website. Take another look at your navigation, take another look at your sidebar and some of these integrations like Facebook, and I think that this is going to be even stronger than it already is. So with that, I think we're done for this week, and if you want me to review your website next, leave a comment, wherever you're watching this video on, direct message me, and we will get you on the list, and I will rip apart your website.